Welcome to my video on subjunctives. This video is designed to accompany Wheelock Chapter 28 in the 7th edition. We'll cover the present tense forms of the subjunctive and two uses, jussive subjunctive and purpose clauses. So first let's talk about verb moods. Finite verbs occur in three moods. I'm not talking about infinitives. Infinitives are verbal nouns and they don't have moods, so just finite verbs. Indicative mood is used for statements and factual questions. So, for example, eam laudat is the statement, he praises her. Eam laudat, question mark, is the question, does he praise her? The second mood is imperatives. It's used in commands, like eam laudata, praise her. And the third mood is the subjunctive. It's used to indicate potentiality or unreal things. Since we haven't learned the Latin ones yet, I'll tell you in the next slide, I'm going to use English examples. So English example of potential, long may you live. May indicates potential, so we would use the subjunctive in Latin. Unreal is, for example, if I were taller, where that implies, but I'm not taller, so that therefore it's not real. So the subjunctive mood is used in a whole lot of different subordinate clauses, and we will be learning those over the next 12 chapters. It's occasionally used in a few types of independent clauses, which means as the main verb in the main clause. We're going to learn one and only one of those, the most common one, in this chapter. The translation of the subjunctive depends on how it is being used in the sentence, so what kind of clause it is used in. First, let's look at the forms. We're only learning in this chapter the present forms. So the indicative has 6 tenses. The imperative, we only learned the present tense. There is a rare future form that you'll see in intermediate and upper level Latin. The subjunctive has 4 tenses. The present tense that we're learning in this chapter, the imperfect tense is in the next chapter, and then the perfect and pluperfect are in the chapter after that. So let's look at the forms of the present subjunctive. These are on page 228 if you're using the 7th edition of Wheelock. So since Wheelock presents you the whole paradigm for this, I'm going to instead give you what's called a synopsis. We're going to look at various forms only in the third singular. So first, the present active indicative, the ones we learned first. Here's your common forms that I hope by now you know and love. So you would translate this as an indicative, he, she, or it blanks, as in he, she, or it praises. We've also learned the future in all 4.5 conjugations. Remember, the first and second conjugation use bo bis bit, and the third and fourth conjugation use the thematic E vowel, except in the first person singular where you have an A instead. We'll see that on the next slide. This can be translated as he, she, or it will blank, so he, she, or it will praise. And then finally, the new forms, the present active subjunctive. These are all done with a vowel change. So in the first conjugation, instead of laudat, it's laudet. Second conjugation, moneat. Third, agat. Third, io, capiat. Fourth, audiat. This theme vowel occurs in all forms of the present active and present passive. If you want an acronym, or not an acronym, a mnemonic to remember them all, there's this handy little phrase, we fear a liar, where the vowels in that sentence line up to the conjugations that, the Latin conjugations which use those vowels. So you will see that particular theme vowel in all 6 forms of the present active and present passive subjunctive. You can look at the whole chart on page 228. So to give you a sample translation, let's use the jussive subjunctive, which will translate as let him or her blank. So, for example, let him praise. Okay, just for good measure, let's take a quick peek at the first singular, because that's the only one that has one oddity in the future active. So there's your present active indicative for singulars. There's your future active indicative first singulars. Notice in the third IO, and fourth IO, we're using the theme vowel A, but in the other persons and numbers, the theme vowel switches to E, so that ending is only in the first singular. If we apply our we fear a liar verbs to the subjunctive, you'll see that for the third and fourth conjugations, they look the same only in the first singular, not the other ones. All right, last two slides, let's look at two uses of the subjunctive and how to translate them. So the jussive subjunctive is one of the very few types of uses of the subjunctive in a main clause. That's another way of saying an independent clause as the main verb. So, the sample translation of this is let him or her do something. So audiat is a complete sentence, let him hear or let her hear. The word jussive comes from the Latin eubeo, eubera, usi, usum, which means I command. So essentially this is a roundabout way of commanding somebody, a different way than using simply the imperative mood. Purpose clause is the first of many subordinate uses of the subjunctive we're going to learn. So this is a subjunctive used in a dependent clause, otherwise known as a subordinate clause. Let's go to the next slide to see some examples. So, purpose clauses. You have a main verb in the main sentence, which could be any mood, indicative, imperative, or subjunctive, plus the word ut, if you're doing a positive purpose clause, and then a subordinate verb in the subjunctive mood. So, for example, hoc dicit, he or she says this, ut, eos you wet. That is a first conjugation verb, so the subjunctive is formed with the E vowel. It's you-o, you-wara in the dictionary. So she does this, ut, to help them. There are many ways to do purpose constructions in English. Turns out there's a couple ways to do it in Latin as well. The first one that we're learning is ut plus the subjunctive. So she does this to help them is one example of an English purpose construction. She does this in order to help them. She does this so that she may help them. All of those are equally acceptable ways to render the Latin purpose construction into English. If you want to do a negative purpose clause, then you do the main verb, again in any mood, plus ne, plus the subjunctive verb. So, hoc facit ne capiator. The IA is the subjunctive form for the third IO conjugation. Translation is she does this lest she be captured. This is not an English word we use a lot anymore, but it means in order that not. So she does this in order that she not be captured. So this is a negative purpose clause with ne plus subjunctive. The end.